Good morning, everybody. I'm very happy to welcome the smiling Myoshin Diane Benjamin, who is a lay teacher at Clouds and Water, who leads the youth practice, which she's been involved with in one way or another for at least 10 years. That leadership reflects her deep interest in the ways that practice permeates work and family life and supports social change. She's been practicing since 1996. She received Dharma transmission from Sosan in 2022 at Clouds and Water, and she's had extensive practice with both Hokyoji and Ryumonji, but also a lot with Thich Nhat Hanh. And she's a musician and a mom and a wife. So with no further ado, I will ask her to give her talk to us and promise her that we will listen with joy and concentration.
Good morning. I'll let all our friends get on the call here. I just want to say quickly, I am not the youth practice director at Clouds. I just help with the program. Andrea Spangler Farley is our new youth practice director this year, but I can't seem to ever get my fingers quite out of that role entirely. Anyway, I want to thank Hokyoji so much for inviting me to speak. It's really great. And I was really happy to say yes, of course, to all of you lovely people. So I'm going to talk for a while, and a special hi to Ken. It's so nice to see you. And Phoebe. I mean, it's nice to see everyone, but I miss seeing Ken at Clouds. So I want to start with an acknowledgement before I begin my talk. So I want to acknowledge our land ancestors. So I'm coming to you from Minneapolis. And so the Dakota people were the original inhabitants of this land that I'm on. I want to acknowledge our blood ancestors. So that's all of the people who loved and raised us and are responsible for our being born and being here. And I'm hearing a little echo back, and I want to be sure you can all hear me well. I wonder if maybe Kyoko could turn off her sound. Maybe that's where that's coming from. Anyway, I'll go on. And finally, I want to acknowledge our spiritual ancestors, all of our spiritual teachers from India, China, and Japan, and especially the Japanese Americans who brought Soto Zen with them when they immigrated and who suffered a lot at the hands of our government. We should never forget we are intimately connected, past, present, and future. So today, I thought I would talk about one aspect of the Eightfold Path, right effort, and how right effort relates to the practice of rest. And I'll also touch on a couple of related teachings. So I want to talk about the part of the Eightfold Path that's right effort with the idea of radical rest and how sometimes our dominant culture's penchant for overwork can hijack our practice, and then how we can turn in a different direction. So whenever I am thinking about doing a talk, I always start with questions. And my questions on this topic are, why is it so hard to deeply rest? At least for me. So maybe that's not your thing, but for me, very hard. And why is it that no matter how much I do, I have a little feeling that I'm not doing enough? And how does deep resting fit into a spiritual tradition that values intensity, vigor, and energy? So those are sort of my guiding questions that I'm coming with. So some of you know, and some of you don't know, but about 3 years ago, I had a heart attack. I don't have heart disease. I had a specific kind of heart attack women sometimes have, where your artery, basically the inside of your artery shreds. And so it took me about 9 months to have anything approaching my previous level of energy and activity. It's a very slow healing from this kind of situation. And I remember I went into Clouds and Water a few weeks afterwards for a morning service, and I could only make it about a third of the way through the Heart Sutra before I was just too exhausted to even chant that short text. So similarly, I've had foot issues for the past couple of years, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to sit on a cushion or execute a full bow in a graceful way. So both of these situations really gave me an opportunity to sit deeply with how much of my identity was and is wrapped up in what I can do as the demonstration of my vow and the measure of my practice. And I found I had a really deep attachment to being able to do certain things and be a certain way in the world with a certain amount of energy. And that being really like a measurement of the quality of my practice and my devotion. And I thought to myself, that's not so good. I don't think that's really how I want to be. So that's some of my personal context, but also I think we have to look at the larger cultural landscape. So the overemphasis on working, on being productive, on not wasting time, there's a deep strain of that in European Protestantism, and it's kind of been reinforced and amplified during the Industrial Revolution when clocks kind of came in as a sort of measure of time. And also the concept of laziness is like something that's really been used as a slur, ironically, against people who were the hardest working, probably. So immigrants were accused of being lazy. Enslaved people were accused of being lazy. Poor people were and are accused of being lazy. It's used to differentiate others from hardworking, upstanding citizens who are usually white and of means. And rest was and is literally stolen from some groups of people. So I think we have to have that, like, we're not free from that larger context when we try to consider this. So then we bring this all into our practice, which in Soto Zen has a heavy dose of the traditional Soto Zen monastic training system, which maybe isn't always so balanced between rest and effort. And I wanted to share something Judith Regier, who's the former guiding teacher of Clouds, writes in a blog post about this. So she says, what does it mean to truly rest, to let the field actually lie fallow, to be so patient we can actually endure a field where nothing is happening? I love that line. And she says, this has been one of the harder practices for me in the Zen training system. In the Japanese Zen training system, there's very little emphasis on rest. And when I do rest, I often feel guilty. I'm trying to change this within myself. So I also can really relate to that guilty feeling. Rest is really devalued. It's devalued in my ancestors. It's devalued some of the ways I've chosen to live my life. And I think it's really sometimes devalued in our practice. Another very wise spiritual teacher that I've really learned from on this topic is Mushim Aikida. And she's a teacher at East Bay Meditation Center. And she wrote a beautiful article for Lion's Roar magazine entitled, I Vow to Not Burn Out. And I'll come back to that in a little bit. But she says, I'd like to see the exchange of self for other re-envisioned as the care of self in service to the community. Perhaps your community, like mine, is in need of inventive ways to carve out spaces for what some are now calling radical rest. I advocate for more forgiving and spacious schedules of spiritual practice that value being well rested and move toward honoring the body-mind's need for enough sleep and downtime, because self-martyrdom is bad role modeling. Burnout and self-sacrifice injure all of us who are trying to bring the Dharma into everyday life through communities of transformative well-being. So these are strong words, and I became interested in how this connects to right effort. So I'm sure you have all heard this story of the Buddha talking to one of his disciples who was a musician. And he asked the disciple, if the strings on his lute were too tight, could he play? And the disciple said, well, no. Well, what if they're too loose? No. So our effort has to be in that just right zone, not too tight, not too loose. So how do we find that, right? How do we find that just right? And this is where 4 aspects of right effort really are helpful for me. And I'll summarize them like this. So the first suggestion is to avoid and prevent unwholesome states from arising. So let's consider overwork and burnout as an unwholesome state. So let's prevent that from arising. That's the first recommendation. The second one is, if unwholesome states have arisen, abandon them. So if we notice that, like myself, like I noticed, wow, I am really invested in how much I can do, in doing, in being active, in being a certain way in my body. If that state has arisen, that attachment to that, maybe I can practice letting that go. Maybe I can experience what practice might feel like if that's not front and center all the time. The third one is, if wholesome states have arisen, protect and continue them. So when I feel refreshed and rested, I can take care of that and continue that and practice in that way. So that's really good. That's a really good recommendation. And then finally, if wholesome states have not arisen, develop and bring them forward. So how, if I'm feeling weary, if I'm feeling less than excited about my practice, if I'm feeling unenergetic, how do I develop and bring forward the wholesome states of rest, of joy, of energy? So those are extremely helpful, I think, sort of universally in life, but also in this area, I really benefited from taking those up as a practice. So I really believe that deeply resting is a practice. It's not doing nothing. It's really an active practice, because it's a resistance against a dominant culture that overvalues production, activity, and accumulation, right? That's the world we're living in. For some of us also, it's an offering to our ancestors. So maybe some of us had ancestors who had their rest stolen from them. Or maybe we have ancestors who overvalued hard work as a judgment of worth, and they lived their whole lives with this sort of sense of not enough, of being not enough. We can really offer our rest as a gift, as a healing for our ancestors. It really can be part of our bodhisattva vow. It's not a lack. It's really an active offering. That's been very powerful for me, to really, when I am able to rest, when I am able to change my mindset of what I value, I offer that back to all my ancestors who worked so hard and never, in my knowing of them, really were able to ever let down that burden of feeling like I can rest. So that's some thoughts that I've had about rest and effort. And now I want to talk a little bit about, if rest is a practice, how could that practice actually look? So in the past few years, I've been really using another related aspect of the Eightfold Path, right? Mindfulness, to do a practice of checking in with my body. Because what I realized is that I wasn't even sure what until I was absolutely at the end of my rope, what tiredness kind of felt like. I wasn't able to be present with that until it was just at a level where I just had to stop, right? So now I have more of a practice of regularly checking in, like, how am I? Do I feel any physical fatigue? If so, where do I feel it? Do I need to sit down? Do I need a nap? Do I need to sleep in this morning? Do I need a 10-minute break? Do I need to stand up and move around? Even I try to check in with my adrenal system because I've learned to identify that feeling when my adrenal system's kind of on overdrive, because we can't rest if we don't even know that we need to. And when I started checking in, I realized I had this habit of just overriding this deep fatigue in my body, and I had to learn its signals before it became acute in order to take care of it. So being forced to rest really kind of helped me a lot, actually, because it kind of taught me a little bit about what I needed to do to monitor that as I went. So right mindfulness is really, really important in this domain. We have to be able to identify, when do I need to rest? And I would say also, what does it feel like when I am not fatigued, when I am well rested? Then I also feel like right concentration really comes into this too. So what I've learned is that I need to check in with my mind as well, especially during Zazen. So does my mind feel kind of dull, flat, weary, racing? I've learned what my unrested, overworked, stressed out mind feels like. What's the quality of that? I know that now. And then when I identify that that state's arising, I have some options. So maybe I just need to change my posture. Although right now I have few options, but even a little bit, maybe I just need to shift a little bit. Maybe today is a great day for listening to a guided loving kindness meditation as part of my meditation practice. Maybe I need a nap. I don't know. But if I can feel like how my mind is when it's in this kind of over unrested state, or this over active state, there's a particular sensation now or a particular state I kind of know, and then I can make some different choices. And then just sort of generally, I used to kind of bear down in my concentration in a certain way, and it creates this, for me, a kind of a brittle thinness of mind. And a more restful concentration for me is more of just unfolding my mind and body and relaxing into exactly how it is, even if my mind feels dull and flat and weary. Just sort of unfolding into that rather than kind of this, I have to do something to kind of whip my mind into shape, right? So that's also been really, really beneficial. And then I find a lot of times, because of my deep karma and habit energy around rest, I'm often unsure what I need to do. So sometimes I ask myself these questions. If I rested right now, would that actually strengthen my bodhisattva vow? Would that help me engage with my vow? Would it increase my alertness in meditation? Would it help me have more energy to care for my family? Would it help me let go of negative self-talk or discouragement? So then, if those answers are yes, I need to rest as a practice to support my bodhisattva vow and to engage in right effort. So I want to touch on another teaching that comes up for me in the context of right effort, and this is part of the 5 hindrances. So old number three is sloth and torpor. Um, and sloth is the physical part of fatigue, and torpor is mental fatigue. So a lot of times in the past, I would set these up as enemies to guard against instead of a clue telling me I need to do something different. So now, when I notice sloth and torpor arising, I feel like, ooh, hello, this is a warning. I need to bring some more freshness and relaxation into my practice. And I think I used to sort of berate myself more like, oh, sloth and torpor. So that's a different kind of response, and one that I found a lot more helpful. It's not, of course, being caught in sloth and torpor is not productive to practice, it's not beneficial. But I think of it now as like a light going on, like, ooh, I'm feeling really slothful. Ooh, I'm feeling a lot of mental torpor. What is that telling me about what I need to do? Now, I don't think we can do this by ourselves. We don't and can't do anything by ourselves, but especially in this domain, I can't fix this problem just myself. And one reason is those of us that overdo know we get all this positive reinforcement for doing a lot, right? People love you. They want you around. They ask you to do things. This is my life in Sangha, right? They want you to do stuff because you get a lot done and you're really useful. And you always say, yes, yes, I can do that. So that's great. And as long as that feels fresh, I am not saying we shouldn't have that energy in our communities. But I think we need to help each other. So if we notice a Dharma friend who's been maybe working a little too hard, we can encourage them to take a rest. We can respect that our teachers and leaders aren't available 24/7, and we can honor their needs for days off and breaks. Right? Someone says, I'm not available today. We can say, that's wonderful. I promise I won't email or call you. We can, as we do at Clouds and Water, take a couple weeks break for weekly practice. We do this in December and August, and that gives all our volunteers a chance to rest. We can experiment with Sesshin and Ango schedules that build in body work and rest breaks, rather than trying to duplicate a schedule that creates more exhaustion. And I want to say just a little about this last thing. So one thing I've really noticed over the years is that for people who are working and parenting and have kind of full lives, then we kind of come crashing into Sesshin right out of that. And then right after Sesshin, it's right back in the swirl. And there's kind of no avoiding that in a way. For me anyway, most of my life, that's been how I've had to practice. It's just a reality. I can't take, an extra day or two after Sesshin off of work to kind of integrate and kind of get some extra rest. And I often, can't take a day before to, sort of get, that would be ideal, right? One time, a few years ago, I sat Rohatsu Sesshin and I was unemployed at the time. I was between jobs, as they so politely say. I was unemployed, but anyway, I was in transition. And so I was using my extra time to rest more and exercise. And I was a lot less stressed because I left a really crappy job that was very difficult. So I came into Rohatsu Sesshin, I was kind of fresh. And my quality of practice was really improved. It was kind of amazing. And that I just tucked that away, like, wow, that really makes a difference. So I think we have to acknowledge, that's the circumstance for most people in our communities. And so within a session schedule, how do we build in a little bit of rest, a little bit of ease for people, understanding that people are generally not coming in from a spacious, relaxed place. They're coming in from a pretty full life, and they're probably going back to that. So one thing we've been doing at Clouds, for example, we often don't go all the way to 9 p.m. on the last day. If we're doing like a 2-day, we'll end at 5. So people have an evening to kind of go home and unwind and get, do their laundry or whatever so that they can go back into their work week with some rest. And we also start a little bit later than is typical. I mean, we're not starting at 10 a.m., but we start at 6:30 a.m. instead of maybe 5:30 because we know people are so sleep deprived. So we want to try to create the conditions where people can practice in a restful way and practice with energy and alertness. So I am a big fan in Dharma talks of leaving lots of time for conversation. And so I want to do that. But I want to end by sharing a little, doing a little rest meditation right now. Because sometimes I know when I'm tired or I feel like I have a lot going on, I feel like I need to rest for a century before I'll feel better. And what I've actually found is there's ways to bring a sense of deep rest and relaxation into my life in small, regular doses. That's immensely helpful. So one thing that I often do, and I often do this during session, during breaks, I just take like 10 minutes to lie flat. And if your body can do this, if you can actually lie on your stomach with your arms up, your nervous system's something about that position like this, you just calm. And then I just breathe slow and let my out breath be longer than my in breath. And just a very simple thing, I feel so refreshed when I'm done. So that's just an example of a really simple thing that we can do. But I also wanted to offer a short resting meditation called foundational grounding. I'm studying right now to be certified in it's kind of a meditation and embodiment form called realization process. And this is a meditation from that practice. So if people would like, just get yourself in a good sitting posture, which you're probably already in, it looks like, but you can adjust how that is. And you can have your eyes open. So if you want to turn your camera off for this, if it feels weird to be staring at the camera, that's fine with me. Or you can turn. I'm going to keep facing forward just so I'm here. So you can relax your gaze, but have your eyes either looking down or even just relax straight ahead. Just taking a couple of easy breaths in and out. And then inhabit your feet. So when I say inhabit your feet, if you can, just let your awareness slide down inside your feet. And make sure you are in the whole foundation of your feet, all the way to the back of your heels. And let yourself rest there within your feet. Let your breath adjust to being this far down in your body, so your inhalation isn't lifting you up away from this foundation. And notice that because you have this foundation, your mental life can rest. And your emotional life can rest. And now see if you can inhabit your pelvic floor, which is the bottom of your torso, including your sits bones. Experience your pelvic floor contacting and settled into the chair. Let yourself experience the foundation of your pelvic floor. Your creative energy can rest because you have this foundation. Your emotional life can rest. Your mental life rests. Just resting on your pelvic floor. And now you can inhabit your respiratory diaphragm, which is at the bottom of your chest. The diaphragm moves with your breath. Remain settled within your diaphragm as it relaxes downward with your inhale and comes gently upward when you exhale. So your emotional life rests because you have this foundation. Your voice even rests, and your mind rests. Then bring your awareness to the bottom of your throat from your collarbones all the way to the back of your neck. The foundation at the bottom of the neck allows you to settle down through the neck so your voice can rest and your mental life rests. One of my friends says this collarbone she imagines like a park bench, and she's stretched out across it. So we can rest on our collarbone. And the last foundation in our body is at the base of our skulls and our jaws. So you can bring your awareness up into that part of your body and let your face rest. Let your mental life rest. And let all your senses rest. Let your eyes rest in their sockets. Let the top of your head gently settle and rest. And now you can inhabit your whole body, resting in all of these foundations. Your feet, your pelvis, your diaphragm, your collarbones, and the base of your skull. Just sit for a few breaths, just enjoying a sense of resting. Okay, so I'm going to put in the chat a little bit of a vow, actually a whole bit of a vow from Mushim Aikida, who I talked about earlier. And I'll just say it out loud and then I'll leave some time for questions. You can copy this vow for yourself if you like it, or say it along with me. Give you a second to check the chat if you want. So this is her vow and also my vow. Aware of suffering and injustice, I, Myoshin, am working to create a more just, peaceful, and sustainable world. I promise, for the benefit of all, to practice self-care, mindfulness, healing, and joy. I vow to not burn out. A great vow. All right, my friends, that's enough of my words. I'm really interested to hear if anyone has anything to offer. Yes, jump on in, Erin.
Oh, sure. Thank you. Yeah, I just thank you for that. I really appreciated your taking the time to say it. It hit home because I had kind of an experience with my mom. My mom had cancer and has since passed away, and she didn't realize realize it until she was at kind of stage 4. They finally, I mean, I think they were looking into it, but they just sort of didn't find out. And she told me once that she was at some kind of meeting and people were asked to move their chairs, and she was kind of thinking about it because she said, "Oh, this isn't going to go well," because she didn't feel well, and she did it, and I think she kind of damaged herself a little bit. That's the only reason she mentioned it, is because she had to kind of be careful after that. And I just remember thinking the dynamics of that. You want to be self-sufficient. You don't want to ask for help. Other people might not even recognize if you're healthy. It might not even occur to you that something so easy as moving a chair couldn't actually be kind of a challenge. And it probably, because it was my mom, it really, that kind of hit me. And yeah, so I mean, I think I do try to notice for myself, but for others. And it feels like a delicate line because some people really don't want to be helped. And so it's been something I've kind of been thinking about. And I think just people sort of taking the time to talk about that and have it out there it's just really helpful and helped me, certainly. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That's a great comment. And I wanted to just respond to the last thing you said about sometimes people want to be self-sufficient and not be helpful and helped, directly, like say, oh, I can do that or whatever. And that's why I think we need to look at our overall cultures of our communities so that overall we're supporting people practicing self-care and taking care and helping each other and being in everything together. I'm looking at the dog. It's so beautiful. That's the best thing about Zoom, is seeing people's pets. Hello. Um, I have some myself, but they were banished for this talk. Anyway, but I think if there's a larger culture of that, then people don't have to feel like, oh, it's a big thing for me to ask or offer. It kind of takes it out of the personal so much. It's just sort of part of the ethos of how we are together, where we're really helping each other, right? Um, and then people maybe don't have to feel like, oh, I can't do that. There's something wrong with me, because it's just accepted that not everybody does everything and everyone's contribution is super valuable, however they're able to be. So, yeah. All right. Anyone? Yeah, Mary.
Thank you, Myoshin. I feel like that was like I had meant to be here this morning. So a couple things. I loved your practice that we just did. It reminds me of Soma Yoga, which is the practice of yoga, somatics, looking at you know our individual bodies. And what happened with me with that practice was I was sitting on a chair. I'm sitting on my desk chair, and you started that practice, and the first thing you said was, "Okay, think about your feet and how your feet are grounded." Well, my feet were swinging and not grounded at all. I was in my chair swinging my legs. And I noticed that as soon as I move forward on my chair, put my feet on the ground, it changed my entire body, how I was in contact with the ground. And it was amazing. So I thank you for that. And then the second thing I just want to say is because it's to Aaron's point. So I'm currently walking through a breast cancer treatment journey. I don't think she will mind if I say this, with my daughter. And she's 33. So we're sitting and so I've already lost a sister to breast cancer, and another sister who's had breast cancer, but she's doing fine. So the last 6 weeks have been kind of tough, and I have tension in my muscles constantly. And anyway, so I've been noticing that. Anyway, to Aaron's point, we're sitting in the oncology office 3-4 days ago. And my daughter's a very quiet person, a reserved person. And there's just a lot of stuff going on, a lot of moving parts, because she, it's the oncologist, what the chemo regime is going to be, and the radiation and the endocrine therapy and scans and port placement and this and that. And so she is sort of crying too, kind of teary, and I'm sitting there, and she has a partner as well there. And so you could imagine in our minds, well, thinking, well, my daughter, I know she's upset about X, Y, and Z, like in our own heads, right? Everybody in the room. Or she's making up our stories about, oh yeah, this is a really hard visit because she's dealing with this news about what her treatment is going to be and everything and whatever. But what I know about my daughter is that you have to ask her, because you're going to be wrong about what she's upset about. And she's taught me a lot about that, because I'm a chatty person and she is not. And and so I asked her, and she said, I'm upset about not getting all of these scans and appointments and port placement and everything, because she wants to work in a little trip there. I want them on the books. I want them planned. I need the times, the dates, and whatever. And there was just a lot of crossing over and the scheduler and everything. So it wasn't about her cancer, her chemotherapy, her what. It was getting things on her calendar so she had a plan about what was coming. So I guess my point here is that we sit often thinking that we know how people are suffering, or we don't know, but we make up stories. But we need to ask. And you can ask, like Aaron's, you can ask, would you like me to move the chair? Person then can say, no, I'm fine. I can do it. Or thank you very much. I'd love that.
Well,
So
thank you. Thank you very much for offering that. I appreciate it. And if you would like, you could type even just your daughter's first name in the chat, but we can add her to our prayer list at Clouds if you would like that. I'd be happy to do that. We pray for people Wednesday nights and every other Sunday. So, but for her privacy, you could just offer her first name if you want.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wish you well.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else want to say anything about right effort? Rest?
First of all, can you hear me? Okay. Thank you for your relevant talk. It's especially relevant to those of us who are aging, because there's a lot of limitations that we are faced with more and more and more. And sometimes it gets confusing. It's hard to discern when to respect that need to rest and when to do something else, or also there's just the whole element of guilt in not being able to do all that you did before, and not just accepting that sort of this is the way it is, and having a little compassion for oneself, and also not worry about what others are thinking about what you're doing or not doing, even what they're expecting. For us to respect our own boundaries about what we can do and what we can't do, and that's okay. But anyway, for me, with a lot of physical ailments, this is very related to the whole process of aging, because it's not going to get easier and better physically. It's just going to get more and more challenging. And how am I going to how do I practice within that? So you have some very good ideas about recognizing that, what to do, how to, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, we're all aging. And
Right.
like you said, like I remember once in my 40s somewhere, I looked in the mirror and I just thought, this is as good as it gets. I mean, I'm as young as I will ever be right now, right? So it was kind of a moment. I mean, it was really vivid. I was just like, I'm not going to have less lines on my face ever. I'm not going to have less gray hair. It doesn't work that way. That was very helpful, right? And that's what I mean, though. I think we really have to help each other, especially, a lot of us grew up with these, attitudes and ideas, and we're used to being really vigorous. And so, and those of us that are leaders in various contexts, it's like, how do I be a leader who honors the, models and honors the reality of my body and mind being how they are? That's what I want to do, right? But it's like you said, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard. I don't know exactly what time you wrap it up. It's 10:18, but maybe we have time for one more comment if someone has one. At Clouds, we always have it's like 10:23. It's very precise because we have some other things that happen.
Well, we don't have much that happens. So we've got 12 whole minutes to go. So plenty of room for comment.
That's great. Yeah. At Clouds that, puts their hands together and they're sort of like, not too much.
I have something else to add.
Yeah, please.
It's about the related topic that we touched on a little bit about our desire to be independent and not need or not ask. And one of my issues for myself and others is the importance of recognizing that our need is also an offering, and it gives other people an opportunity for generosity, which they would not otherwise have. So part of our practice, I think, is that it can not only be to accept what is offered, including help with the chair, because sometimes we'll just say, no, I don't need help, but actually you do. But we won't take it. We won't take it. And could we just take it and say, thank you very much?
Yes, thank you. Yes, that is exactly how it is. It is an offering.
Right.
To need help. It is. Yep. I realized that many years ago when I noticed how happy I felt helping other people.
Yeah, we need to give people that opportunity, and including going so far as to maybe ask for help sometimes.
Yes, shocking. We can ask for help.
Right.
But if you think, really, it's true. It's not like that's just some justification for being weak. It's really true. And also, we know no giver, receiver, gift. It's all a cycle. And so I think about aging, like we had our opportunity to be younger and do more. And now we have an opportunity to receive more. It's like that. Like, I think like with my own parents when they were aging and ill and then passed away, I didn't resent for a second, even though it was difficult sometimes, taking care of them, because I would just say, well, they took care of me.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like that. So even in our own lives, it's like that. We all had an opportunity to devote ourselves to others in various ways. And so it's just being part of that wheel and not saying, well, I only want to be part of the giver part of the wheel. Well, it doesn't.
That's quite common, actually.
Yeah.
It's easier for us to be the giver than the receiver.
Yes,
and that's
it
something
is.
I think we need to practice.
Yep, but we can't really. We're really not just the giver because
Oh, right.
Yeah, that's just a little delusion that we got.
Right.
Well, I'm giving. Or I'm taking. I'm only taking.
Oh, right.
Either way, but
Mm-hmm.
Hi.
hi, Dokai. Good morning.
Morning.
Nice to
Thank
see
you,
you.
Myoshin, for mentioning probably one of my most favorite suttas is when Buddha speaks to Sona
Yes.
about playing the lute. Previous part of that story was Sona was a fine musician and grew up in a very affluent household, and then he wanted to become a monk, and he always wears slippers or sandals, being from an affluent household. And when he became a monk, he took off his slippers and sandals and went barefoot like the rest of the monks, wanting to be just like them. But his feet weren't calloused like the rest of the people, and his feet got bloody and sore. And that's when the Buddha approached him about how is it when you play the lute, because Buddha knew he was a musician and had to adjust the strings according to their tightness or looseness. So I read that sutta many, many years ago, and it's guided me probably really dramatically. I think especially in the practice that I offer at Hokyoji too. I try to make it not too super tight or not too super loose. Thank you for bringing that story up.
It is a beautiful story, and thank you for sharing the rest of it. I didn't want to, go on too much, but I enjoyed learning more about the story. And, I sort of vaguely remembered it, and then I looked it up, and it's really a great story. And it really shows, I think, the Buddha's compassion, and also sort of wisdom. And it is a great story. So, and that is my experience of Hokyoji. So, hooray for you and your colleagues. All right. Well, I think unless someone has something else, maybe we'll have our whatever closing you all do. I see some things in the chat. It looks like a chant. So I don't know. Do we chant that?
I'll take it from here.
Okay.
Rest. Yes. Well, first of all, thank you so much. That was such a great topic, and you did really a superb job in my estimation of laying it out and tying it to the teachings. That's I think what really refreshes me when I realize just how vital this practice is in every moment of my life. So first of all, next week we'll have Onryo Kennedy with us, She's been on a couple of times, a very dynamic speaker. And then we have Mio On. Susan Hagler is going to be with us. And then after Mio On, we'll have Mio O, who will be with us in the last week of the month. And this week is kind of a rest month for Hokyoji. But after March, we'll get into April, which has a work weekend, and Clouds and Water is coming for one of two sessions this year. So they'll be here in April. And then we do Caring for the Land, which is always a great way to start a May, I think. And a Just Sitting retreat led by Lee Lewis. Actually, he'd say he's not leading, he's just sitting. So it's that kind of a retreat. Nobody can tell anybody else what to do retreat. And then we have in June a much beloved women's retreat that's led by Aikyo. And then we have Bill Tresha's group, a kind of different kind of just sitting group. So we'll start getting really busy in the spring. And we appreciate all of your support for both Tomoe Katagiri's retirement fund. Well, that's really not what I should call it. It's a retired leaders fund, of which she is one. So we will close. In the chat box, we have the 4 vows, and we appreciate your support very much. And the chat box tells you how, if you'd like to make a donation for this day, you can go about it. I have to remember how to start the great vows. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unexhaustible. I vow to realize it. May your lives go well. Very good to see you, Ken. Thanks for coming, everybody.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me.
Bye, thank you.